What kind of things do high achieving women have as obstacles when they're trying to get into relationships?
Shelve the masculinity at times and embody our feminine energy where we are the vulnerable recipients of the masculine partner.
Give me 5 date night ideas from your book that people would never think of in a million years.
And strengthening that relationship with source and with ourselves is where we allow the invocation and the invitation for a greater love to come into our lives.
Being a workaholic is not a virtue. Like, that's not a good thing. Don't aim to be a workaholic.
We start to deplete ourselves or to convince ourselves that we're not enough on our own. But we aren't enough on our own unless we're connected to the source that created who we are.
Well, welcome. We're back for another episode, and our guest today is a best-selling author, dating and relationship coach, Mars Venus gender intelligence expert, and premarital coach. She studied at NYU and UC Berkeley, and she founded Love Sanctuary, where she works as a speaker, life coach, and runs workshops and group courses. We're happy to have with us Angela Nicole Holton. Angela, thanks for being here today.
Hello, Mike. Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, we appreciate it. And, I checked out your Instagram and I realized we have a mutual friend, Dr. Dave Montgomery.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, Dave
Absolutely.
we love Dave. We've had him on and he's a good dude. So, small
Great
world,
person.
right? Small
It
world.
is a small world. He's a wonderful person. I've known him a really long time.
Cool. So thanks for being here. And tell me about the work you do. I know you provide dating and relationship coaching at Love Sanctuary. Tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. Yeah. So I founded Love Sanctuary about 10 years ago, and it came as part of my journey in discovering healthy relationships for myself and really understanding why a loving partnership had eluded my life. What were some of the choices I was making or not making that was preventing relationships, not that I didn't have healthy relationships. I wanted marriage. Why was a marriage elusive from my life? And so it really led me into doing a lot of inner work and exploring things about myself. And so as I discovered things about myself and healing parts of myself that was preventing me from attracting that partnership, it led me to want to offer these tools and resources to other women, primarily. I do work with men, but primarily my audience is women. And so I offer courses, one-on-one coaching, speaking events, all about relationships. While I think relationships are the cornerstone of our lives, whether that's business, friendships, my work tends to focus more on romantic and love relationships. I really tend to help women who are busy, high achieving women who have not made the time or don't have the time or haven't made relationships a priority. I help them navigate the confusion around dating and relationships to really attract that partner that they desire.
Okay. So you mentioned high achieving women. Tell me about that. What do you think
Yeah.
their obstacles are, specifically? Because that's a very special kind of group. They're not like everybody else. High achievers are high achievers, right? They're not the average. They're
Yeah.
the upper percent of humanity. Hate to say, not everybody's a
Yeah.
high achiever, but we know that, right? Men and women. But I mean, tell me what kind of things do high achieving women have as obstacles when they're
Yeah.
trying to get into relationships?
It's a great question. So I think a couple of the obstacles are, one of them is prioritizing, right? They're often busy and they're prioritizing business, career, work, school, education, and not really prioritizing their desires for a relationship. And I think once they become more intentional and conscious about the things that they desire and make this effort just equally as important to achieving success in their business, then I think that's an obstacle they can overcome. And I think one of the other greater obstacles is women today, we have many more opportunities available to us, which is wonderful. But there is also this hyper-masculinity that's happening around the world. And women are often embodying and operating more in their masculine tendencies. And in that goal achieving, that pushing, that striving, that doing, which often leads to burnout in women, often removes or is counterintuitive to the tendency that allows, if you're looking for a masculine partner, to come into your life, to draw and naturally and organically attract that, because we're out there being the leaders and we're doing and striving and pushing, when we really kind of want to fall back
Yeah.
sometimes. Part of our lives where we're settled in, we're relaxed, and we're that energy of receiving. The feminine receives, the feminine tendency receives. And so when we want to attract that partner, we allow ourselves to sort of shelve the masculinity at times and embody our feminine energy, where we are the vulnerable recipients of the masculine partner. So when we learn to balance those things, the high achieving woman can attract a masculine partner.
How hard is it to find that balance? Do you ever find that these women in particular just like what they do and they don't want to cut back on those long hours? Because people who are, I mean, the CEOs I've met and known in my life, they love working, right? Like they can work
Yeah.
18 hours a day and they're content doing that. It doesn't leave a lot of time for anything else. So talk a little bit about that.
Well, I think for anybody, whether you're a man, female, male, female, however you identify, we're human beings, not human doings. We're not machines. So that whether you're a man or a woman, you're pushing and you're striving and you're working those long hours and you're not allowing yourself to settle into rest and respite, you start to build on, higher cortisol levels. You start to experience more stress, more burnout, more anxiety, restlessness, sleeplessness, and then other another host of problems can occur regarding our health,
Yeah.
our spiritual health, our mental health, our emotional health. So you can still work those long hours, but you got to find time to balance the other part of your life,
Yeah.
the part of you that's not striving, whether it's not attracting a partner or not, but the part of you that just allows yourself to let others take care of you, where you receive, where you are led by other people. The feminine, the tendency, we enjoy
Hmm.
collaboration, communication, community, which is why women, we love girls' night out and girls' trips. That is part of our DNA.
Yeah.
So if we can find time for those things, those are opportunities to sort of shelve and relax into the feminine and shelve the masculine tendency.
Yeah, that's interesting. And no, I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, like being a Christian myself, I remember I was listening to like a Christian counseling seminar or something years ago, and I remember the man that was speaking. He was a professor at a seminary, and he was saying, being a workaholic is not a virtue. Like that's not a good thing. Don't aim to be a workaholic. It's unhealthy and it creates a lot of imbalance. And then, of course, what you mentioned, it raises those cortisol levels. It creates a lack of health because we're just wearing ourselves down. And yeah, no, that's interesting, and that's
Yeah,
something a lot of people, I think, in today's rapid, fast-paced business world and work world just have to grasp. You know?
yeah. And you don't hear people at the end of life saying, I wish I worked harder. I wish I spent more hours at the office. You don't hear that. But we live in a society that doesn't celebrate our rest and our respite. It doesn't inculcate in us to balance the two,
Yeah.
that it's okay to say no, that it's okay to
Yeah.
rest. Rest is seen as something as a weakness or
Right.
laziness. And it's just not the case. There's a lot of strength and empowerment in rest. There's a lot of rejuvenation in rest and a lot of re-energizing when we're rested.
Hmm.
And we can pull in a lot of different things. I find a lot of creativity in my respite when I'm not doing for other people, when I can say no to others and just yes to myself. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
It is limitless
Yeah.
what I'm capable of doing. And it's not a selfish act. It's an act of self-preservation, to find that time for self where you're setting boundaries and you're saying no to the timeline, to the deadlines, to other people, and finding that most important relationship. And that's the one with
Yeah.
ourselves, finding that sacred time to pour into ourselves. Because if we don't do it, who else is going to do it? And then we become resentful because no one else is doing it. And we're like, I'm doing this for this person and that person, and no one's taking time to pour into me. Well, if we want other people to pour into us, we have to be vulnerable to ask for it and then be willing to receive it.
Yeah, I couldn't agree
Got to
more.
just
I couldn't agree more.
let go.
And it's
Yeah.
amazing, like how the perspective of life can really shift, and it can be like a wake up call when you think of those deathbed moments, like what
Yeah.
mattered then, right? Like those are the things so many people live an entire lifetime not thinking of what's meaningful and what they should be focusing on. And like, I've struggled as a man just to balance things.
Hmm.
When I was new to having a family, I think I'm a little better these days, but I'll let you ask my wife that when we're done
It's a
recording here.
practice.
Yeah, but I
It's a
mean,
practice. Life is a
yeah,
practice.
exactly. And I'm very intentional now, but there was a time where I could work 17 hours a day, and then it did lead to health problems later on
There you
that I
go.
had to get out of. So, what you said is like a mic drop right there, Angela. Like we can end the podcast right now.
Boom.
But that was true, and that's a great point. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah,
Um,
I think we all get a wake up call at some point.
yeah,
But I like to encourage people and my clients not to wait for that, to be
yeah,
intentional about creating balance, not waiting till something shows up where you have no
yeah,
choice. And I think we all get the call. Some of us just don't answer it.
yeah. No, you're right.
So,
And nothing's worse
yeah.
than getting that call when you go run some labs at the doctor and you've got this wrong and this wrong and this wrong. It's like, whoa, all right. You
Yeah,
hit that wall and it's time to stop. It's time to slow down
it
and,
is.
and reset. Um,
It is.
so important. And, I know you focus a lot on relationship dynamics, and I want to switch gears a little bit here.
Sure.
We previously had Dr. Avram Weiss on. He's a relationship expert from Psychology Today, and
Hmm.
he gave us some really good insights into men and how they think and maneuver around women. And I'm excited that you're here because I want to get a woman's perspective on this topic.
Sure.
I love talking to Avram, and he taught us a lot of things, and now I want to hear what the other side says. So, a
Hmm.
lot of Avram's work is focused on what he believes is there's an innate fear of women that men have that comes from a number of factors stemming back to early childhood experiences. So, as a woman, do you ever sense this fear in men? And I'm not just talking like, I'm not asking you like in your personal life necessarily, of course, unless you want to share, but just in your relationship coaching and those different things. Is there a fear that you think men have of women that's like really deep seated and hard to see at first?
Sure. Sure. I'll answer that and I will share some of my own personal perspective. I don't know if it's innate or not. And what I will share is that, it takes a woman to really understand a lot of growth and maturity for the woman to see a man and in a different totality than you see them as a young girl and a young woman. As a young girl and a young woman, we have this propensity to put men on a pedestal. We're waiting for that knight in shining armor to come save us, to protect us, to rescue us. And so we give so much credit and strength and empowerment to men and sort of disavow our own. That we need this man, this partnership to complete us. We need him to choose us. Please choose us. And we seek that approval if we're not taught to seek our self confidence in other ways from our childhood, from our primary caregivers, from the relationships that we witness as children. So I think, and I say that because as a young woman and as a young girl, you don't realize that men might be operating from a place of fear toward you, the way that they may, I remember when growing up, the boys that might be mean to me on the playground, that my mom or an adult would say, oh, that's because they like you. And I'm like,
Yeah.
what? But he just threw a ball at
Yeah.
me or he just teased me or bullied me in front of, and then in high school, I discovered the same thing, that the boys that were mean to me or embarrassed me in front of other people, they ended up liking me a
Mhm.
lot. And they ended up saying things like, I was afraid to let you know how much I liked you because I didn't think you felt the same way. Or I didn't want my friends to know how much I liked you. So I think that plays into part of that. And so as we evolve as women, or we hope to evolve, growth is optional, maturity is optional. You start to see that, and I wish I could speak to my younger self
Mhm.
that would cry over guys and no, they didn't like me.
Yeah.
Really realizing the power that I had, that they were really uncomfortable.
Mhm.
And I do think that I don't know if it's innate or if it's patriarchy, if it's society or culturally driven. There's a lot of pressure on men to be men and whatever that means. And so if you fall short of that in any sort of capacity, I think men have a greater proclivity to become more insecure. And I think it's that insecurity that men have, innate, learned, whatever it is, that they often feel not good enough in a lot of different ways in their life. And so approaching certain type of women, it comes across as bravado and confidence and, swaggered and a lot of ego. But inside is like, a wounded boy,
Yeah.
just like the woman that he's pursuing who is also has an inner child who's also wounded. But men often have that wounded
Yep.
boy that society does not teach him to get in touch with,
Right.
that he's taught to refrain, to disconnect from that part of himself and be ashamed of that part,
Yep.
and to be whatever that man part means. You disavow emotion, you disavow feelings and pain, and neglect those
Yep.
things. And so if you neglect those things, how can you really ever show up in the capacity of real
Yeah.
confidence
No, you're so
with
right.
women or anyone?
Yeah.
So
You're so right.
I
No, you hit that perfectly. And it's funny because when we talked to Avram in that older episode, um, the same things came up. It's like men aren't taught to deal with
no.
their fears and their weaknesses and their vulnerabilities. That's seen as weakness and, the stiff upper lip, power through, don't talk about it, don't cry in front of people. I think that leads to like emotional problems later in life when they don't learn to deal with those things. Everybody has weaknesses and vulnerabilities. And if you're just putting on an act 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, that you're in control at every moment,
Oh,
that's a pressure that, uh, I mean, I don't think I try to do that. I probably had periods in my life when I was younger where I did stuff like that. I think all men struggle with that to some extent, but that's not healthy,
yeah,
you know?
no, it's not. It's not. And, we live in a world that, especially in America, that celebrates that form of masculinity, or that identification of that's what it means to be a man. And I think that there are ways for a man to express vulnerability or be in touch with his emotions that doesn't necessarily mean exposing all of those truths to a woman.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a whole nother conversation.
Yeah.
But men, just as women, have the wherewithal, if they allow themselves, to resolve emotion within
Yep.
themselves. And that's when men go off on their own or go into their cave or spend time with the fellas, whatever. That is that piece of vulnerability
Yep.
or checking in with their
Mhm.
emotions. And a healthy man is able to resolve or connect those emotions and come back to their partner, or come back to life,
Yeah.
whatever, with a deeper sense of understanding and consciousness, and really reconciling whatever that issue or emotion
Yeah.
was.
Yeah. And I think more men need to be in community with one another. I think
Ah,
that's something men are bad at too. And there's that statistic I keep coming across over and over again that men die the loneliest. Women are so much better at community and coming together and supporting each other and lifting up one another. And I've seen exceptions to that rule on the man's side. Having been a member of a church for many years, the same church, there's always been a solid like men's group where men would get together and have those moments where there was tears shed and there was hugs and there was just struggles that were shared, and it was like a safe space to do that. And I mean, I think the breakthroughs I've seen in those moments like are forever embedded in my mind because they were so awesome. And there's
yes,
so much to that. And I'm not saying, I mean, I like finding those solutions in a church personally, but like men can find that in community, whether they go to a church or
absolutely.
not. And I just think more guys need to look for that. But then it comes back to what you said. They're afraid, right? If they're
Yeah,
trying to get a group of guys together to talk, they're, the first thing's like, why? What do you want to talk to me about that for? You know what I mean? Like, just how guys are, they almost repel that.
Yeah,
And I just think guys do themselves a great disservice when they do that.
disservice, yeah.
Yeah.
And we need to encourage our men to do that and to find that, and so that if they can be better leaders in their relationships and their partners and then their families, and not because displaying those type of things, or not connecting with that part of themselves, can tend to bleed into their partnerships and their relationships, right? That unhealed parts of themselves, or the outburst, or the lack of communication. And then you don't want the masculine or the male to lean too heavily onto the woman or the feminine to sort of be the sounding board, because then the woman becomes the masculine leader, and there she is, comforting and protecting her man.
Yeah.
Whereas a man has the capacity to find that on his own with his bros, or however you do it,
Mhm.
and then you come back to your family, your partnership, your business, your work,
Mhm.
sort of having addressed that more whole and complete with that issue, that matter, and can be more conscious, more compassionate leaders in that way.
Yeah, definitely. Talk about some of the workshops that you do. Are they for just women or for couples, or talk about
Yeah,
those?
yeah. So for the last year and a half or so, I've sort of been on my own personal sabbatical, taking much of my own rest and creating other things that I wanted to do for myself, including attracting my own partner. Not just finding time to help everyone else find someone, but really saying, you know what, you got to focus on you.
Yeah.
And in that, I did. I attracted my life partner.
Awesome.
And so the workshops that I teach are, I focus on singles, and I'm just now getting into the couples work, which is the Mars Venus gender intelligence work that I do. But the singles work that I do is I do workshops for finding partnership, conscious dating, conscious love and dating, helping singles attract self love,
Hmm.
internal love, before you find external sources to complete that. And through that, attracting partnership. And so I'm also now getting into teaching workshops on premarital coaching, understanding gender intelligence and relationships, gender intelligence in the bedroom. I'll be doing workshops on
Hmm.
that, communication workshops, really everything relationship oriented. I'm here to serve relationships. I'm here to make the world better. My call of service, my life purpose is to make the world better, one heart at a time, one relationship at a time. And so my workshops all center around that, starting with the most important relationship, with God
Hmm.
and with ourselves.
Amen.
So,
Well, we'll definitely dive
yeah.
into that some more. As far as, you mentioned that self-love piece. Do you think that's a huge factor in people who struggle with relationships, people who don't have that self-love?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And I'm going to take it even farther than calling it self love. Is I think people are looking for love outside of themselves, and they're seeking love from short term, ephemeral things that are fleeting moments of happiness, fleeting moments of fulfillment. And they're not seeking the source, the creator of love.
Hmm.
And for me, that's
Hmm.
God. You can't have love outside of the creator who created it,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
How can we have anything if we're not including the source of love?
Yeah.
And so for me, self love is connecting, reconnecting, and remembering, because we're all born knowing that we're a source of God,
Hmm.
but we forget it, right?
Yeah.
Babies come in the world and they're these perfect, beautiful little beings, and babies know they're pretty magnificent.
Hmm.
But through life, things happen. We forget our divinity. We forget how much God loves us, that they created us to be here. And so that disconnection from the source, that disconnection from where love comes from, where it flows organically, where there's more than enough of it, we start to deplete ourselves, or to convince ourselves that we're not enough on our own. But we aren't enough on our own unless we're connected to the source that created who we are.
Amen.
So
Yep. No, you're right.
it goes back to finding the source of love, connecting with love, accepting yourself for who you are, being authentic, right? Not self-editing yourself for other people, speaking your truth, non-judgment towards self and others, not labeling our emotions good or bad or right or wrong. They are what they are. Making peace with our past, forgiving ourselves and others for the choices we've made or did not make. It doesn't serve us. So from that place and strengthening that relationship with source and with ourselves is where we allow the invocation and the invitation for a greater love to come into our lives in whatever way that looks like. That could be a partner. That could be just the abundance that the universe provides for us. To me, that's all love. And it's the energy and the flow of love.
Yep. No, I agree. You know, there are atheists that can be in, happy marriages, 40 years.
Yeah.
There are those relationships where people don't seek, the source, which I'm in agreement with you. It's God 100%. But I still think God puts that into the human spirit that they're able to even love. It's just those people haven't discovered where it came from first. That's my opinion,
Yeah.
It's
Well,
yeah.
yeah. I'll say this, for anyone who's atheist or agnostic,
Mm-hmm.
I think it's important or at least powerful to believe in something greater than ourselves.
Yeah.
That there's a higher power, a higher energy, however you see that, not trying to convince someone of a religion or a God, but if it's Earth, Mother Nature, if it's the wind, the ocean, what's out there, like where can we find connection to something deeper and greater than ourselves?
So true. So obviously you're a woman of faith.
I am
Talked
a
about
very proud woman of faith.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So how's your faith in God shaped how you counsel
Oh,
people in relationships? We're kind of scratching that surface right now, but dig into that a little bit more for me.
it's everything. I'm very mindful. My faith is the cornerstone, the center of my life. That it comes before my partnership, my business, my family. Everything that I am, everything that I have does not belong to me. And I give acknowledgement to the source for everything that I have. And so I do lead with that in the work that I do, but I'm also very mindful and sensitive that I don't work with just Christian clients or, faith-based clients. But I find something for people to believe in. It's the hope in something. I don't know how we live in this world or thrive or wake up each day without hope, because we've all been brought to our knees in some way, somehow, in some capacity. And so for me, hope is something that has always been the driver, the impetus, the motivation that keeps me going. And so in the work that I do, I like to invite people to have that relationship with themselves and their higher power before they seek partnership, to really understand what it means to love by loving ourselves without condition, to at least understanding how much we're already loved.
Yeah.
Because if we don't understand how much we're already loved, like we're just enough, then we're going to seek that validation in someone else. And in that, it'll never be enough. Because the minute that person's not giving you the attention that you were used to, you're looking for something else to satiate that insatiable desire. But no one can feel God-sized needs.
Right.
And we're human and we have God-sized needs, the need for validation, for love, to be seen, understood. One person can't do that.
Right. Yeah.
And if we're putting that much pressure onto someone, then we're going to understand and see that our relationships are not working out. We have to seek self-validation and know that we are enough because God says that we're enough. And the fact that we're here, we're enough. We're not defined by our past. We're only defined by our mistakes if we allow ourselves to be dictated and governed by the choices that we've made. But I help clients really just understand that that love without condition that is out there for us. And however you want to see it and know it and believe it and embrace it, you will go out there much more confident in who you allow to be a part of your life and who you will allow to be a mirror to you of what love looks like. But you have to know that inside. And I just don't know how you can know that inside without spending some time with self and connecting with an energy, a source, a power that validates you from the inside out. And then from there, and how I use this in my work, you're happy because you have found your source of happiness here.
Yeah.
Everything we need is right here.
Right.
It's like we're born with it. We have it. Then when you find that partner, it makes your life happier.
It's like icing on the cake, right?
Yeah, it's the cherry on
Yeah.
top because you've already put all the toppings on there.
Yeah.
And so even if that cherry, that icing isn't there, there's still a really solid core foundation. And you can enjoy that hot fudge sundae without it.
Yeah.
And it'll still be just as divine.
Yeah, that's awesome. Do you ever experience pushback from people when you steer them towards, the higher power, I'll say God, but whatever word people are comfortable with, because not everybody's comfortable with that word, and I understand that. Do you ever get pushback from people when you point them to that?
No,
No, never?
no.
Interesting.
Because when they come to me, they're ready for something really different. And if they don't have a relationship with God or source, they welcome the conversation or the idea of it, willingness to hear something different. Just be willing.
Yeah.
Just be willing. Just be open. I'm not going to try to change your mind. You can call it what you want. I have had clients say, I don't feel comfortable calling it God. Fine. I meet my clients where they are.
Right.
We can call him universe, source, creator. But I don't get pushback where I don't believe. I think I get people who are tired of believing that they're on their own.
Yeah.
They're exhausted. Things aren't working out. And so they come to me at the point of, I surrender. Something's not working in the way that I've been doing things.
Yeah.
And I think also because in my work, because I lead with my faith, I attract people who are also interested in that in some form or fashion. Right. So it's not someone, but I welcome anyone, anyone. My heart is open for anyone, atheist, agnostic. The invitation is here because that's the work I believe we all have to do. It's still love. If you want God to be called love, that's fine because God is love and love is God. I can meet you where you are.
Yeah. That's great. Obviously, people who come to you are searching. So it's interesting that you say that they're not pushing back on that. I also believe that, as a Christian myself, God puts that desire for him in every human heart, and humans fight to suppress it, or they replace it with stuff, or, you know what I mean? Some belief system, whatever you call it. Everybody has a God. They just don't realize it. And
they call it something different
there you
than
go.
God, right?
There you
But
go.
there's something that we're serving.
Yep.
We're serving something.
Yep.
Yeah.
No, I couldn't
And
agree
I think
more.
people get tired of what they're serving. They get tired of
Yep.
This hasn't worked out for me.
Yep.
I've tried this, I've tried that.
Yep.
And my life is in shambles.
Yep.
So I think, what I ask most of my clients when they come to me is to have an open mind, open heart. Let's try something that you haven't done before. Let's be willing to hear something you haven't heard before. And then they're like, wow, my life has changed. I like to go for the juggler. I go in. I like to find the Achilles heel in people.
Yeah. That's awesome.
I think
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So you wrote a book called Date Night Ideas for Couples.
I did.
Where did you get the inspiration for that? And tell me about the book.
Yeah, so it falls in line with the work that I do, right? Helping cultivate healthy, happy relationships, and date night is an integral part of connection and keeping connection in relationships. But the book works really well for singles who are dating, couples, married couples, and it even translates. I had a podcast interview with someone who said, these dates work really well with my girlfriends, and it does. Everything, it's relationships, and it's creating fun, innovative ideas to do things differently. I was actually commissioned by a publisher to write the book, but they're all my 80 plus original date night ideas, and they're novel ideas, and they're meant to be for any budget. So there's an idea for the very little to no money to let's it's called level up. Let's level up the date and make it as extravagant as we want it to be. So there's something for everyone. The book is truly for everyone. You can find a date, I guarantee, you've never thought of. And it's also a fun and tongue and cheeky, playful way to make just driving in the car. I find a way for you to have a date and connection just driving in the car. In the mall, if you just want to be spontaneous. Do you remember when you were kids, at least for me, when I was a child, I have two sisters and two first cousins, and the five of us, we were always together. We were like, the Rat Pack, the Little Rascals, whatever you want to call them. And my grandmother would take us to the mall. And, as a kid, you enjoy shopping up until a certain point. And then you're like, but as long as we entertained ourselves, my grandmother was okay, or our mothers were okay. So we would find things to do in the mall. We'd play hide and go seek in the mall. We'd find, okay, I spy in the mall, or the next person who does it. And so I kind of reinvent that for adults, because part of connecting with someone is that openness and that vulnerability and that playfulness. And in that playfulness is the remembrance of our childhood and nostalgia. So the book has a lot of nostalgia in it and a lot of questions. There's conversation starters to help you. Definitely, I don't care how long you've been with your partner. There's a question in there that you have not asked your partner. So I guarantee 10 years, 5 years, 30, 40, 50 years you've been with a partner, you're going to discover something new about them. And it's fun.
It sounds like it. That's really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, my thing at the mall.
I'd love to send you a copy.
Yeah, I'd love that.
The two of you.
I'd love that. Definitely.
Absolutely.
Please do. I love that mall mention, because that's where my parents took me when I was growing up, way back when. And for me, I remembered specifically, and it was chocolate macaroons. So it wasn't like a date night, it wasn't like nothing like that. But my parents would go to the mall to do whatever they were doing. And if I got my chocolate macaroons, I could stay there for 3 hours. I was good. So for me, it was food, right?
Awesome.
My siblings are older, so they weren't hanging.
So do you still love chocolate macaroons?
I don't eat chocolate macaroons, but I have a serious chocolate addiction. And
So do I.
do you? It's really good.
I eat a little square of dark chocolate every day.
A little square? Ritual. I eat a little many squares.
No. Okay, maybe 2. Okay, maybe 3 squares.
Now we're at 3.
But I'm not one that can just sit and eat a whole candy bar.
Oh no?
No,
Man, I
but
wish
it's
I had
just my little
gift.
treat.
Yeah, see,
I got it from my mom. My mom growing up, she could have a Milky Way in her purse for like a week. And the Milky Way, she'd have a bite and wrap it. And then I'd sit in the car with her and I'd say, Mom, can I have a little last piece of your Milky Way? And I just kind of adopted that same way. But
yeah,
I want to ask you a question. So is there anything that you've done that you enjoyed in your childhood that you bring into your marriage and your partnership as a date, as a shared activity?
Not consciously, no. It's nothing I ever thought of, and it's interesting, and that's why I'm delighted that you're going to send me a copy of that book.
I'm going to send you a copy and
no.
give you a call to action.
Yeah, definitely. No, I haven't. Man, I can't think of anything.
Think of something you love to do as a child. You loved, because that's what happens sometimes is we forget the things that we did and enjoyed as children. And it's like somehow we have to be cut off or removed from that because we're adulting and we're adults.
Yeah.
No, let's bring that inner child in us is still there. And part of the way we heal some of our childhood core wounds is by inviting that part of ourselves back into who we are and integrating that inner child, that teenager child into who we are and celebrating the things that we enjoyed then. And that's what I do. I mean, I'm a big kid sometimes and I love it. I just did the mud girl race with my nieces, and I mean, I didn't love rolling in mud as a kid, but I was in covered in mud this past
Uh-huh.
weekend and loved it. Loved it. And so one of the tools that I give the women that are single who want to attract a partner is to do those pleasure
Yeah.
activities that they did as children, because it's in that playfulness,
Yeah.
right? That lightness that we evoke this light energy that is attractive,
Yeah.
isn't
Yeah,
it?
for
Right? Like,
sure.
oh,
Yeah.
she's fun, she's light, she's
Yeah.
happy, she's enjoying her life, she's
Yeah.
fulfilled.
That's
So
really wild.
yeah.
Not to put you on the spot, but give
Uh-oh.
me like your top five, not top five, because you probably like all of them, but give me five date night ideas from your
Ooh.
book that people would never think of in a million years.
Okay, and they're more esoteric, right? They're
Okay.
not your like typical go to
I
dinner.
got you.
But they all have they, you know, you might hear them be like, I don't get why, but they're a big deal to me because they're tapped into some type of my childhood or my past.
Okay.
One of them is called radio roulette. And radio roulette, I played with my father and my sister when we would go visit my dad, and we drive in the car, and my dad is a music buff.
Hmm.
And I learned a lot of music from my parents, and we turn on the radio, and he put the radio on scan, and you have to guess who the artist is of the song.
Okay.
And you keep score.
Yeah.
And so if you're going for a drive, you just, and then you just let it play on scan.
Yeah.
And then you said something like whoever wins chooses dinner for that
Yeah.
night, or doesn't have to do the dishes for a week. And it's just fun. It's just something to do and engage while you're just driving in the car.
Yeah.
That's one. Another one is planes, trains, boats, and automobiles, which is also something that I did on a date in college or after college, and went to a place in California right near the airport, and we just sat on the roof of the car and watched airplanes land. And the plane got really kind of close at the spot. So the idea around the date is to find a place where either boats are coming in, or trains are passing by, or airplanes are landing. Pack a picnic basket, or grab some non-alcoholic libations,
Mhm.
or take out and go sit and watch the planes, the boats, the trains, the automobiles, and then use those conversation starters.
Mm.
Another one I love is chasing the sunset. Go find the sunset. Go find wherever it is, and like, say, okay, honey, we're going to go like chase the sunset. Like,
Yeah.
where do you think it's going to be? And like, grab the food, grab whatever, and then just go find the
Yeah.
sunset. Let's see, that's three. Another one is puzzle night, which I did recently. It's called the piece to my puzzle, the piece, Peace, to my puzzle.
Mhm.
And it's really about bringing in sort of the intellectual, mindful part of dating. Like we all connect on different levels, whether it's intellectual, sapiosexuals. So the puzzle was a very relaxing, peaceful, calming way to connect. So find a 3 to 500 piece puzzle. Grab your bottle of wine or non-wine, whatever, and put on some tunes and put a puzzle together. And this is whether you're single and dating someone, so it's sort of like a continual date, or you're married and you can like meet every week, every Friday night. Let's start putting some pieces to our puzzle. And then, like we're doing, is you can glue it, frame it, sign it on the back, and then hang it on your wall. And then it will always serve as sort of a memorabilia of that special connection that you had.
Yeah.
That's
I
four.
like
Let's see.
that.
Let me think
These
of,
are good. I
yeah,
can't wait to get
that's,
this book.
let's see. What's the fifth one? I mean, there's so many in there. I'm
Yeah.
not probably going to draw a blank.
It's all
The
good.
other one I really enjoy is recipe tag team. And so recipe tag team is when you and your partner have to come up with a meal with what's in the house.
Mm-hmm.
And so one partner starts with whatever the base is, chicken, noodles, pasta, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And they start, and you set a timer and you start part of it. And then the other partner doesn't really even know what ingredients the partner has put in there.
Mm-hmm.
And then they add their little thing to it with the timer. And then you just keep going back, maybe 3 or 4 rounds. And then to the meal, you both consider the meal complete. And then you sit down and you enjoy the meal together. Or you don't enjoy it,
Yeah.
but you have to eat it together. And that one last one I'll give you that I really enjoy,
Yeah.
it's called Name That Movie. And I had named that movie for 100 as part of the title, but it ended up being just Name That Movie. And again, it's taking Netflix and chill, that just watching, sort of passively watching a movie and making it engaging, where you go to YouTube or go to a streaming channel and you play excerpts of famous movie lines or not so famous movie lines and see if your partner can guess them.
I like that.
And whoever guesses them
Yeah.
wins.
Those are great.
And so, yeah, and so they're so simple.
Yeah.
And then each one of those dates are leveled up to something so much more extravagant.
Yeah. That's great.
So,
No, I mean,
yeah.
there's so many creative ways to build and enhance connection with one another that we just overlook. And
And that's what this book is about.
yeah, I love that. No, that's awesome. Thanks for sharing that.
Sure.
Tell me about conscious dating.
Yeah. Yep. So conscious dating, conscious love is the idea of removing the idea that we just happenstance, like meeting that partner is just by happenstance, or that there's just one person for us, or that we fall in love. So conscious dating is really antithetical to all of that. It is being intentional about what you want, who you are, and how you show up in a relationship. It's about dating and connecting from the inside out, discovering who we are by, I believe in the list. I wrote the list, but the list is for you to become it, right? So whatever a person puts on their list that they want in someone else, conscious dating is about becoming what you want in someone else. Because the more you become what you say you want and believe you want, you become the mirror reflection and attraction to draw that into your life. So conscious dating is dating from a place of greater intentionality and self-awareness. Who am I when I show up on a date? What parts of myself do I modify or edit to please someone else? Am I authentic?
Yeah.
And then it's also using dates. This is the really big part of conscious dating and how I help women, again, mostly my audience, find partners, is making it less about the person that you're dating and more about you. So there's no such thing and can't be a bad date, because each date is about discovering something about yourself. You can't learn about yourself. You can read as many self-help books, my books, relationship books, go to church, pray. You can do all those things. But until you put those tools into practice, until you have someone sitting across from you and you are practicing that vulnerability, that communication, those different things that you flirting, it means nothing. Like, it's just, so conscious love and dating is about, I'm going to go out with this person. It may not be based on physical attraction or a lot of compatibility or connection at all, but I'm going to go to practice the things that I've discovered about myself and to learn something new about myself. And then after that date, you write down what you learned, what you would do differently on the next date. Maybe you had this list of red flags or non-negotiables, and maybe through dating this person or meeting this person, you've sort of softened in something, or something's become more important and less important than the other. So that's what it's about. It's about using dating as a curriculum and as a field placement, as, really a practicum. You're out there practicing.
Yeah. Do you think people, like when people date or when they're dating somebody, they always end up denying or hiding certain aspects of themselves when they're getting to know somebody? Do you think that's always
Of
the case, or
course.
do you think everyone just goes
Of
with an open
course.
book? Yeah.
I mean, and not intentionally. I mean, I think that's part of the pre-stage. That's one of the early stages of dating, is you're not comfortable or safe enough to really, and nor should you be, to expose fully who you are. But I'm not saying that you modify who you are, but I don't think you necessarily, there's boundaries. You don't completely open up yourself.
Right.
So you're going to be a little bit more agreeable,
Yeah.
a little, you're going to be a little bit funnier and all those things,
Yeah.
until you're not, until you feel comfortable showing those parts of yourself that are flawed, because we all have flaws. So I remember in a Chris Rock stand-up, I think it was Chris Rock years ago, he talked about dating, that it's not you showing up, it's your representative. And there's some truth to that, right? There's some truth to that, we, we want to set a good impression. But I still think in setting that good impression is to be true to who you are. Don't be who you aren't. That isn't, and in saying that, I'm not saying bring everything about yourself in the first couple dates, but be mindful of when you're modifying yourself to get validation or approval in the person that you're on the date with. If you really don't like sushi, then don't agree to go to a sushi restaurant because that's their favorite. Say, like that's so. But even then, relationships are complex. I think relationships are the greatest teacher that we have, the greatest life lessons that we have. They challenge us the most, but they're also what evolve us. So people who are looking to go into relationships and think that it's going to be a bed of roses, not always can be.
Yeah.
But it's really what you feed and nurture in that garden is what your relationship becomes. And that takes work. I don't like to say hard work because I think, whatever you say is what is true. So if it's hard, it's hard.
Yeah.
It's going to be hard. If you say it's hard to date, if you say it's hard to meet someone in my area, you get to be right. So I like to just say, like anything else that we want that's worth having takes work.
Yep.
And a great relationship takes great work.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned something earlier, and I just wanted you to elaborate on that a little bit. Gender intelligence.
Yes.
Can you explain that?
Sure. How we show up in business, relationships, in the bedroom, in the boardroom, communication, there's difference in men and women.
Mm-hmm.
And when we understand those differences, even for ourselves, it helps us understand our own gender, our own selves. It helps us have a little bit more homeostasis and harmony in relationships. Our needs are different. We may never fully understand each other, but gender intelligence helps provide a little bit more clarity as to why my partner is this way, or what my partner needs, or what my partner is trying to say. It's very different. It's very contrasting for men and women. And so understanding that can remove or at least alleviate some of the challenges that we come against in relationships. When it comes to, communication. Women like to communicate. Women like to talk. That is part of our DNA. But what people don't often understand or know is that men are not supposed to over-talk or over-communicate a woman. And so I often caution women, when you're on a date, if he's talking, now again, I get it if he's talking more because he's nervous, right?
Yeah.
Which can happen. Mm-hmm. Or maybe talking more because you're quiet, because you're nervous. So the male might overcompensate. But in general, if you have someone who's not interested in you, not asking questions about you, and they're over talking you as a woman, that man is likely leaning too much on his feminine side.
Interesting.
A man is supposed to listen and listen and listen and ask her more and more questions. Tell me more, and tell me more about how that made you feel, and more. And because when a man starts to talk and talk and talk, and she is just listening and listening, then she becomes the support and the sounding board. And then she becomes leaning onto her masculine side.
Yeah.
And then, right?
Yeah.
And then she becomes resentful, like, I'm always listening to his problems. I'm always helping. So it seems like it's unfair, but it's not. But, I trained and studied or had Dr. John Gray, who I think is the quintessential relationship guru.
The Mars Venus guy.
Mars Venus, and that's the training that I've done. Yeah. And he talks about how women often say, I want him to be vulnerable. And I've been guilty of saying that. I want him to be vulnerable. No, we don't. No, we don't. Not really. We want him to share and to be open. But the minute a man is really vulnerable and overly vulnerable, we do start to see something different. I think men need to find a different place to be vulnerable. I think men, again, have the wherewithal to figure those things out on their own. And when they don't, then talk about it. But it doesn't necessarily have to come from a extremely vulnerable place. Talking to a coach, if he can't figure it out on his own, talking to a therapist, his friends, but trying not to allow the woman to be his sounding board. Not all the time. Now that can create imbalance.
Yeah. Angela, I've really enjoyed this conversation.
So have
How
I.
how can
So
people
have
find
I.
you?
Yeah, so you can find me on Instagram, which I'm slowly sort of getting more engaged and launching more programs and things that I have coming up, which I'll share in a moment. Instagram is my name, which appears on the screen here, Angela Nicole Holton. And my primary website is under construction right now, but you can find me on the Mars Venus website, which is, write this down, everybody, it's a little long, Mars Venus Coach AngelaNicole.com. Got it? Mars Venus Coach AngelaNicole.com. You can find me there.
All right. We'll put that in the show notes too. And there's so much more I want to discuss with you. So we'd
Sure.
love to have you back.
I would love to come back. I'd
Awesome.
love to come back. And if anyone's watching, I just want to share quickly, if it's okay, Mike.
Sure.
My next offering is I'm leading a premarital group coaching course starting in second or third week of September. So this is for either soon to be engaged or newly married couples. And I really want to share, we often wait until there's a problem or an issue in the relationship before we seek help.
Mm-hmm.
And my objective and my desire is to teach people lifetime skills and tools that you will have so that you can avoid couples therapy. Nothing wrong with couples therapy, but to give you the tools to set your marriage or your relationship, whatever that long-term commitment looks like, set it up for success. So that's what this course will be about. 6 weeks,
Okay.
6 powerful tools.
And where can they find that?
Again, they can either go to the website at the Mars Venus and email me through there, or they can go to Instagram and DM me, or they can email me at marsvenuscoaching.com.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay. We'll make sure to include that in the show notes too, just so everybody can get all your Instagram
Wonderful.
handle and all that too.
Wonderful.
Angela,
Great.
thanks for being
Thank
here.
you so much. It was a pleasure. Thank you, Mike.
That'll do it for this edition. We are out of here. Leave us a comment. Tell us about your relationship. Have you been in a relationship? Are you seeking a relationship? And what steps are you taking to try to get there? And also hit us up at mikecpodcast.com. Until next time, we're out of here. Thanks, guys.
The Mike C. Podcast.